If this video appeared to you, it wasn't by chance. It doesn't matter how many pieces of content you've already seen, how many techniques you've tried, or how many times you've promised yourself that this time it would be different. Today, it's not about more information. It's about a calling. One of those that cuts through the mental noise and speaks directly to that part of you that's tired of waiting, tired of spinning inside the same cycles, tired of feeling like you're always one step away, but never actually getting there. Thoth, the consciousness that carries the memory of all forgotten truths, is reaching you now, not to convince you of anything, but to offer you a choice. The choice to finally look at the only point that has always been in control, but that you've ignored: your observation. The life you're living is not the reflection of your desires, nor of your intentions. It is the raw and exact repetition of the way you've been observing everything around you, consciously or unconsciously. Your reality is a direct mirror of your most intimate frequency, of what you allow yourself to feel, of what you pretend not to see, of what you insist on resisting. And that's why, maybe, this is your only chance to break the pattern that's held you for so long. Because as long as you keep observing from the same place, the universe will keep delivering the same answers. This is not a comforting message. It's a rupture, a reminder that the field is already responding, even as you listen to these words. Now, the only question that matters is, will you continue being a prisoner of your own way of looking, or are you ready to see what's always been there, one waiting for you? The field is responding to what you observe. Everything you feel, think, and, most importantly, observe is shaping the field around you at this very moment. It's not a metaphor. It's not an abstract concept. It's a real, constant, and inevitable interaction between your internal frequency and the fabric of reality that surrounds you. The field responds, always, even when you don't notice, even when you think you're just going through the day, solving tasks, facing the same old problems. The field is there, absorbing, reflecting, amplifying. Life doesn't deliver what you desire. It returns to you, with almost surgical precision, what you sustain in your gaze, what you feed with your emotional attention. And this may be one of the most uncomfortable truths for those who are tired of fighting and frustrated by not seeing results. It's not about effort. It's not about deserving. It's about presence, and about where exactly you've been placing your focus. You can wake up in the morning with the best of intentions, repeat positive affirmations, do your meditation practice, and still spend the rest of the day observing scarcity, lack, rejection, abandonment, as if the whole world were a disguised threat. The field doesn't differentiate between what's intentional and what's chronic. It doesn't understand irony. It simply replicates, vibration by vibration, thought by thought, emotion by emotion. And the most subtle part, what almost no one notices, is that this response from the field doesn't happen only in the big events of your life. It manifests in the small details, in the delays that irritate you, in the messages that never arrive, in the invitations that don't appear, in the constant feeling of fighting against an invisible tide, as if the whole world were silently responding to your internal frequency. And you know what's most challenging? Many times, you think you're observing reality, but in truth, you're just reinforcing a mirror of old fears and conditionings. You look at what's happening, react, feel, and go back to observing more of the same thing. A cycle, a repetition, a dance between you and the field, where the step you take determines the response the universe gives back to you. Maybe that's why, even after so many attempts at change, everything seems to return to the same place, because what needs to change is not the world. It's your view of it. It's the way you perceive, interpret, give meaning. The field is always listening, even to what you've never said out loud. And here, arises a responsibility that may scare you, but also set you free. If the field responds to your state of observation, then it's your presence, your internal silence, your vibrational choice that determines the quality of your reality. It's not magic. It's not toxic positivity. It's physics. It's consciousness. It's the natural flow of life. But before you think that now it's enough to just think positive, take a deep breath. Because what really programs the field are not the superficial thoughts, but the underground emotions, those you try to ignore, but that keep vibrating every day, like a background frequency, a song that plays, even when you try to change the station. How you are programming your reality without knowing it. Have you noticed how many times you react even before you understand why? As if there were an invisible impulse, a force that pushes you to repeat the same response, the same emotion, the same pattern, as if it were inevitable. The truth is that while you believe you're choosing, most of the time, you're just obeying an old program, recorded not by your conscious will, but by everything you've lived, felt, repressed, and never had the courage to face head-on. This programming is not obvious. It hides in your most automatic reactions, in the way you interpret someone's silence, in how your body tenses up when talking about money, in that anxiety that appears even before a real situation happens. They are emotional tracks, neural pathways that have been reinforced for years, decades maybe, and that now operate on autopilot. And the field keeps responding, without judgment, without pause, without interval. What you feel, with or without awareness, becomes a vibrational command. The universe doesn't negotiate with your intentions, it responds to your frequency. And that's why, even with so many efforts, so many attempts at change, life seems to insist on repeating the same scenarios. There's a kind of invisible script, running behind every decision, every word, every choice you make. And until you realize where it's coming from, you'll keep calling it bad luck, destiny, or even karma. But the truth is that, on some level, you are feeding this script every day. That feeling of chronic tiredness, that internal struggle, the fear of being rejected, the constant worry about the future. All of this is part of the programming. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not a sign of spiritual failure. It's just an internal system trying to protect you from a pain that maybe you don't even remember where it came from. But there is a choice. There always is. The first is to recognize, to observe without running away, to feel without getting lost in the feeling. It's not about controlling emotions, but about creating an internal space where they can exist without dominating your perception. When you can do that, even for a few seconds, a new path opens. The second choice is to decide what you will continue feeding, because every ruminating thought, every silent criticism, every time you reinforce the story that nothing works out, you strengthen the field that keeps you stuck. But when you start to observe the program with presence, with kindness, with an attention that doesn't judge, something in the field begins to reorganize, as if reality itself had been waiting just for that moment of clarity to start responding differently. But understanding the internal program is only half the equation. There's another movement, quieter, more invisible, happening right now, as you hear me. Because besides emitting, you're also absorbing the environment, the people, the emotions around you. All of this penetrates your field without asking for permission. The invisible energy exchange, what you are absorbing without realizing. As you go through your day, as you talk to someone, as you simply walk through any place, there is a silent movement happening, a constant exchange of vibrational information. Your energy field, this invisible space that surrounds you, is always open, always interacting, always absorbing frequencies that, many times, aren't yours. You've felt this before, that sudden feeling of heaviness after being near someone who seemed to radiate tension, or that irritation that appears without any clear reason after spending hours in a charged environment, or even that strange emptiness as if a part of your energy had been drained after an apparently ordinary conversation. These reactions are not coincidences. They are direct responses from your field to what you are absorbing without realizing it. What you observe is not just visual. Every environment carries a vibrational signature. Every person, every collective thought, every emotion floating in the air, all of this leaves energetic traces that your system reads, captures, and often incorporates, without a filter, without conscious choice. And when you're unaware of this exchange, you start carrying within you emotions that don't belong to you, fears that aren't yours, anxieties that originate outside but settle inside, as if they were part of your own story. Suddenly, you start the day feeling fine and end it in a state of emotional confusion without understanding why. The field absorbed. And the most challenging part is that the more sensitive you are, the more permeable your field becomes. The easier it is to carry what others couldn't release. The easier it is to confuse what's yours with what merely passed through you. This is the danger of unconscious observation. You don't just react to what you see, but also to what you feel, to what you perceive without noticing, to what crosses your field without asking for permission. That's why so many of us, even when trying to stay positive, end up falling into states of apathy, irritation, fear, without an apparent cause, because the emotional body carries and the field reflects. What you absorb becomes part of your frequency, and the universe responds exactly to that. Maybe now it's time to pause for a few seconds and ask yourself, how many emotions, thoughts, or patterns from other people are you carrying right now? How many of these sensations that seem to be yours are actually just residues from an environment, from a conversation, from a collective memory that isn't yours? And if, at this moment, you want to do a small awareness ritual, I invite you to write here in the comments, I release what is not mine, because the simple act of declaring, of assuming this intention, already begins to create a cleansing movement inside and outside of you. And if this content makes sense to you, if at any point you felt that this spoke directly to what you've been experiencing, like this video now, not just as a gesture of support, but as a vibrational signal that you are choosing to look at this with more awareness, with more presence. But there's still an important piece missing in this process, because recognizing what you absorb is just the beginning. There is a next step that will define much more clearly how your field will respond from now on. And this has everything to do with how you direct your attention, your focus, your intention. Intention and focus. How to redirect your observation consciously. Now that you've started to realize how much your field is influenced, both by what you feel and by what you absorb, the inevitable question arises: how do you take control of this? How do you get out of this state of unconscious reactivity and start to intentionally create a new frequency around you? The answer is not about doing more. It's not about entering a new routine of spiritual practices, nor about trying to control every thought. It's about how you observe, and more than that, about the quality of presence you bring to what you choose to observe. Most people go through the day in a state of distraction. The gaze is on the world, but the attention lost in layers of past and future. The body is here, but the mind left long ago. And while this happens, the field continues reading, recording, and responding to the dominant frequency, which almost always is fear, scarcity, or resistance. Redirecting your observation does not mean forcing positive thoughts. It means choosing deliberately what deserves your attention. It means looking at the details of life with a kind of presence that carries intention, clarity, purpose. It's not looking for the sake of looking, it's looking to create. There is a subtle but powerful difference between observing by habit and observing with intention. The first keeps you trapped in the old cycle. The second begins to open the doors to a new reality, because the field doesn't respond to what you say you want. It responds to the internal state with which you observe everything around you. This means, for example, that instead of looking at a problem as a threat, you start looking at it as an opportunity to rewrite your emotional response. Instead of reinforcing the narrative that things never change, you begin to witness each situation as a chance to create a new frequency, a new reaction pattern, a new choice. And this choice needs to be made several times a day, not as a mental effort, but as a conscious return to the present moment, a deeper breath before replying to an email, a more attentive look before reacting to a message, a second of silence before letting yourself be carried away by anger, by anxiety, by the old programming. This is where true transformation begins. The moment you choose to pause, feel, and redirect. The moment you realize that your attention is your greatest creation resource. Where you place your focus, you expand. What you observe with presence gains strength, becomes part of your field, and attracts equivalent responses from reality. But pay attention. Don't confuse intention with control. It's not about trying to manipulate every detail of your life. It's about choosing with awareness what you feed with your internal gaze. It's about accepting that there are things you can't change immediately, but you can change the way you relate to them. And the more you practice this state of conscious observer, the more the field begins to reorganize the responses it delivers to you. Small signs, new possibilities, unexpected encounters. Everything starts to realign, not because the world changed, but because the frequency of your presence changed first. But there's one detail that you may not have noticed yet. Behind every choice, behind every intention you try to direct, there is a deeper layer, almost invisible, that continues acting, even when you think you're in control. And this layer is made of the emotions you hide, the pains you've repressed, the beliefs that keep vibrating deep down, even if you don't want to look. The submerged field, the hidden emotions that are shaping your reality. There is a level of your reality that you rarely access with clarity, an internal space where all the emotions you avoided feeling are stored, the memories that hurt too much to be processed, the beliefs you never questioned, but that keep vibrating like a silent echo, commanding the way the field around you responds. It's easy to observe thoughts, relatively simple to notice behaviors, but what really shapes your frequency, what truly anchors the same cycles, lies far below the surface. It's the submerged field, the emotional layer you don't name, but that silently governs every choice, every reaction, every result you manifest. Maybe, without realizing it, you're carrying unexpressed anger from years ago, the fear of abandonment, hidden under layers of control, the feeling of unworthiness, masked by a constant search for validation. All of this turns into vibrational pulses sent to the field repeatedly, as if the universe were being instructed to deliver exactly more of what you least desire. And the most subtle part is that this submerged field does not obey what you say you want. It obeys what you truly feel, deep down in the layers you try to avoid. That's why, no matter how much you affirm, no matter how much you visualize, no matter how many gratitude lists you write, reality seems to keep returning the same situations, because the root remains untouched. The resistance you feel, that invisible force that prevents you from moving forward, doesn't come from the external world. It's born inside, fed by years of unresolved emotions, of programs recorded in the body, in the cells, in the invisible connections between mind and energy. It's like trying to change the direction of a river just by pushing the surface of the water. As long as the underground current remains the same, the flow will continue following the same path as always. And with you, it's exactly the same. As long as your deep emotional field isn't observed, welcomed, and transformed, your reality will continue reflecting the same stories with different scenarios, but with the same background script. You know that feeling that no matter how much you change cities, jobs, relationships, the same pain returns with a different face, but the same essence? That is the submerged field in action, a vibrational repetition that insists on calling you back to the origin of the wound, because only there lies the true key to change. And maybe the most important thing right now is to recognize that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're not condemned to repeat forever. But as long as you keep avoiding looking at what you truly feel, life will continue showing you, on the outside, what you insist on hiding. Inside, the good news is that the simple act of recognizing already begins to dissolve. When you allow sadness to exist without rejection, it starts to lose strength. When you observe fear without judgment, it begins to transform. What was once resistance starts to become flow. What was once repressed pain starts to release energy. But of course, knowing this is still not enough. Real transformation begins when you choose to leave theory behind and start acting directly on your emotional field. There is a practical, simple, but deep way to do this. A way to use your own observation as an instrument of energetic release. A process that doesn't require force, but presence. Doesn't require control, but surrender. Pattern breaking, how to use observation to release stagnant energy. There comes a moment when you can't postpone any longer. You feel the accumulated weight, the layers of tension, the invisible knots time left in the body, in the mind, in the soul. No matter how much you try to move on, no matter how much you strive to think differently, something inside you still holds on. A dense, compressed energy that asks to be released. And here, exactly here, observation stops being just a concept and becomes a real tool for transformation. Because truly observing is not looking from a distance. It's not analyzing with detachment. It's being present with everything that pulses, with everything that hurts, with everything that is still trying to express itself. The stagnant energy in your field needs space to move. It won't leave because you reject it, nor because you pretend it doesn't exist. It only dissolves when it's seen, when it's felt, when it's recognized, without resistance. Your body holds memories that your mind has already forgotten. Every tension in your shoulders, every tightness in your chest, every discomfort in your stomach is a silent request for attention. Not superficial attention, but a presence that welcomes, without trying to fix, without trying to run away. Maybe the deepest practice you can do now is not to meditate, not to write affirmations, but simply to breathe inside your own pain, to feel the heat of anger, the weight of sadness, the vulnerability of fear, without judgment. Just observing, as if you were the space that allows all this to exist. And in that moment, something starts to change. What once seemed solid begins to dissolve. What was resistance becomes flow. The energy that was compressed starts to move, maybe in the form of tears, maybe as a long, deep sigh that seems to come from a forgotten place inside you. This is the true pattern break. It's not a forced rupture, it's a natural release that happens when you stop fighting against what you feel and start becoming the compassionate observer of your own experience. You don't need complex formulas. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. The key is in the now. It's in how you choose to look at yourself, without trying to be someone different, without trying to please, without seeking validation, just being and observing. When you do this, even for a few minutes, the field responds. Small waves of relief begin to emerge. The body relaxes, the mind quiets down, and that old feeling of being stuck starts to give way to something new, something lighter, more true. It's a process, not always comfortable. Sometimes, what was repressed comes out with force. Other times, all you feel is a strange emptiness, as if you're between what no longer is and what has not yet arrived. But even this emptiness is sacred. It's part of the release cycle. And maybe the most important thing you can hear right now is that you are not failing for feeling all this. You're not wrong for having carried it for so long. There is no delay, nor punishment, only a deep invitation to set yourself free. Reality will continue responding to what you vibrate. But from today on, you are no longer the same person who pressed play at the beginning of this video. Something in you has already started to change. The consciousness that observes is already more awake. The field has already begun to reorganize. Now, take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a few seconds if you want. Feel the weight that's leaving. Feel the space that's opening. Because what comes next is no longer about resistance. It's about allowing. You are not trapped. You never were. You were just looking from the wrong place. We've reached the end of our journey, and maybe now you're feeling a different kind of silence inside yourself. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of a space that has just been cleansed, opened, prepared for something new. Today, you saw that reality is not an enemy. It's just a mirror, that the field responds, not to what you desire, but to what you carry, to what you observe, to what you sustain in presence. You understood that there is a program, a submerged field, an invisible exchange, and that your observation is the key to breaking this cycle. From now on, your choice is different. If you've made it this far, write in the comments, "I choose to observe with awareness." This way I'll know that you walked all the way to the end and that you're ready to create a new reality.